Is everyone back? Yes, no, maybe?
Yep.
Yep. All right. So which team wants to volunteer to go first?
We can.
And we are team 4?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a choice. Do you want to share the screen or do you want me to share and project to everyone else? And you can just...
Yeah, if you could project it, because
Okay.
the screen I got, everything disappeared on it.
Everything disappeared on it. I hope not. Let me zoom in just to make sure. It's still there. All right. All right, then I will share my screen. And then you guys, and you just tell me when to move the cursor. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is to introduce yourself and who's the PM? Okay, Ralph, so you're it. All right, just let me know if you want me to zoom in and zoom out.
Okay. So my name's Rafael Velasquez, or Ralph, with SunWest, and we got a Husker project I'm going to do. And the scope is to upgrade the Huskers and aspirators. Right now we're with our holding equipment that we take the husk off of rice, conventional rice. It's the machines are 20 years old. We've pretty much got our money's worth out of them. So we're going to upgrade and hopefully get some better cleaning efficiency since there's new haulers out there from Bueller. So that's our scope. Get better shelling efficiency. Not as get cleaner product. Not many hauls in the finished goods, and vice versa. Not any product going out to the bag houses. So if we scroll up.
Okay. Number
projected
3.
Date, it's 9/28, and our budget we're looking at is for equipment costs. It was $670K. Material for installation, we're looking at $26,600. Electrical labor, $22,000. Contracted labor, we're looking at $31,400, and then for our maintenance guys and electrical to help out, we're looking at $9,600. Our statement of work, that's included removal and replace of Huskers and aspirators. Adding ducting and spouting the machines. Dimensions and replacement of electrical components. And then exclusion is the rent equipment. Any kind of forklifts. We got all the forklift equipment here that we needed, rigging supplies, so we need to lift and move equipment around. Our team members, me as a project manager, we got Darius as a lead maintenance. He's basically my customer. Along with his co-team members, they got Rolando Villegas as a electrician lead and Eric Stuckey as the maintenance lead. Where are we at here? Okay, so our assumptions are brief. We got a mill, so there's also mill schedule that we're going to look at, and we also got to do. We're scheduled to be down for trying to do this quick as we can. Try to install and removal of equipment. We're going to start it on 9/10, assuming that we've already got the downtime scheduled for that date. Usually what happens is we come to that date or the week before on the Monday, the start of the week, oh, we got to run. So that's one of our brief assumptions. Our second is the cost. We could go over, so we're trying to remain under budget. off the numbers that we gave you up on top. The other thing, COVID material arrival. When we purchased these Huskers, it was prior to COVID. We had to wait 3 months for them to come out of India. All the ports were closed. So that's another one of our risks that we're looking at, that it has happened to us. And then skilled labor and availability. I mean, we don't know if our skilled labor that we got contracted out, they could get sick and then they're out for 14 days as well. And or availability as well. We've already got them scheduled forecasted for the 9/10. So that's what we're looking at. For the risk assessment, we've got them up there as a risk. Number one is scheduling allocation. We do have it down, but it basically comes down to that Monday of that week of 9/10, and then our budget's number 2, COVID's number 3, and the skilled labor's number 4.
Okay.
And then our parking lot, we got the manufacturer, their techs. We got them scheduled for 9/10 for help with the startup or commissioning the equipment. And right now they're having problems trying to get one of their employees out here. The previous employer got sick, so he's out. So they're looking for some other techs that are in the area that can help us for that date. So that's something that we got to look into further on. So it's an ongoing issue. That's it. We got.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? No questions? All right, then I'll jump in. All right, let's come back up here. Okay, 9/28. So was this based on the 9/7 start date?
Start date is 9/10. Sorry.
Okay.
3 days later.
Okay. All right. So, but still within the frame. So let me ask you, cost. Your labor in-house cost is $9,600, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the 670 includes all of these, right?
No, 670 is just the equipment. We bought 14 pieces of haulers and aspirators, and that was our cost of the equipment.
Okay, so when you get a chance, put the total cost in here for the budget, total budget.
Yep.
Okay, because we'll look at that. So again, just to understand, millwright labor, is that internal?
No, that's contractor.
Contractor. In-house is yours. Installation
Yes.
material, that's whatever material you're going to use. Electrical labor, that's electrical contractor.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So again, let's look at the total cost.
Will do.
Okay, what is the total cost of the project? And for the purpose of the class, we'll only look at the in-house labor, because the others those are external costs that right now they're just giving you a price, right? For the purpose of the class. But we will talk about those as well.
And then our due date, that could be affected by our scheduling as well, on the mill schedule. That could be pushed out later.
Right, but that's part of your risk, right? If I remember correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so to understand how this works is these assumptions, you make these assumptions, you list these assumptions, turn into risk for the most part. And what you look at is what we always say, you look at the top 5, you only have 4, and then you take the top 3 and you create contingency plans. For example, mill schedule not available to shut down for allocated time. Okay, how are you going to mitigate that problem? Okay, in other words, what's my plan if I can't start on 9/10, but I still have a window to be done by 9/28? What are the things am I going to do? Am I going to add overtime? Am I going to increase the number of my crew? Or I'm going to ask the contractor? You need to come up with some potential. You don't have to do it right now. I'm saying is part of this is when you come up with the risk analysis is that you take the top 3, and you only take the top 3 because you could have a whole bunch of risk, but you really want to take the top ones and come up with some sort of mitigation plan of what is it that you're going to do if that happens.
Okay, sounds good.
Right. So
and do you want to put another post-it right next to it and write it out?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's really the only top 3 to start with, because what's going to happen is we're going to discover others. We're going to make other assumptions, and we're going to discover other things, and you're going to be resorting your priorities. But we always want to look at the top 3, right? And so the same thing with costs remain under budget. If the risk is remaining in the budget, what areas are they? Is it related to material? Is it related to expediting the shipment of equipment, because you've already run into that? And how do you plan to mitigate that, right? And so, and you would do the same thing in number 3. And so, and this goes for everyone. We want to get to the point that we have a contingency plan for when those things happen, especially if they're highly likely going to happen. That way you're not waiting until it happens to then figure out what you're going to do. Remember what we said, we got to go slow to go fast. So if it happens during execution, then you already have a pre-plan. You may have to refine it, but you're not reinventing the wheel at that point.
Okay.
Any comments from anyone? Questions? Okay, so as part of this, I want to hear from every team member, what was your personal experience in putting this together? Was it good? Was it bad? Was it easy? Was it hard? Is it helpful?
It's very helpful.
So let's start with each team member. So Ralph, you decide who goes first.
Go ahead, Eric. You go first. You got the speaker on. Eric?
Why don't you go on to the next person?
Rolando, are you around?
Are these guys skipping?
I don't know. They're in a totally separate building. Let me put you on mute and I'll give them a call.
Okay.
Where they're at. Sorry about that.
That's okay. All right, so everybody understand everybody understand? So when it comes to your turn, same thing. You guys have any questions? Any questions or any comments? You guys want to add any comments to these guys? Remember, they'll have the same opportunity when it's your turn.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would consider, the only thing I would maybe add to this, if this is really heavy equipment, you might want to consider foundations. Another adder to the project if it's too heavy for like a 6-inch slab or something like that.
Hey, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why this phone keeps muting, and I keep having to push *6 to get it to unmute. I don't know what's going on with it. So I'll let Eric talk first since he was the first one. Hopefully now you can hear him.
Okay. All right.
Doing this helped me get on the same page as everybody else. That tended to be part of our problem starting projects, is not a lot of communication in between who was doing what, and things were getting done last minute. So this helped put at least me on the same page as what everybody else is thinking.
Okay. What was your experience in putting it together? So really the question, what was the experience? Was it good? Was it easy? Was it hard?
It was good. Communicating with everybody just opened the doors and to view everything that everybody else was seeing that I wasn't.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Okay. Who's next?
Jess, it was no, to me it's a little hard getting all the right info in there.
Okay.
From your comments, I think we missed a couple of things, but I'll probably need some more help on this.
Okay. Well, no, that's fine. And this is part of the learning is if it was challenging and we can talk about what should be and shouldn't be there. So good. All right.
That was Rolando.
That was Rolando, I figured. And Darius is the other one, right?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, that's you. Oh,
So,
I'm sorry.
yeah, no, that's okay. You can't see me, unfortunately.
No, I
I don't have a
can't.
camera on my computer, so. For me, as far as putting the project together, this one was actually a little better than most of the ones we've done. A lot of this work was done way in advance. The big equipment and everything was already purchased and ordered because, I mean, that was almost a year in advance we ordered that equipment. So that was a big relief putting all this other stuff together. So this one probably not as difficult as others where we didn't have that much of the pre-work done, but still a little bit of a challenge getting the labor together. That's probably the hardest part for me is getting all of these different skills together to do one job. You know, you're getting quotes from different contracting companies and getting those all scheduled and then getting the timeline set once you pick a contractor, all that stuff. It's just, it's a bit of a hassle putting all those things together.
Okay. Good. Ralph, your thoughts on was it difficult? Was it easy? Was the format helpful in doing this?
The format was very helpful. I think, like Darius was saying, we did a lot of the legwork on this project. This is our first time actually getting together, but with this class, you know, we come to a realization we do need to communicate more. We've kind of just started a project and then come back a month or two and say, hey, where are we at? Are we almost done? And we come to realize that that's not the way we should be doing things.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have any comments for him? Okay. Who's next?
Team one can go. Can you bring up the screen though, Jess?
Sure. Okay. Team one.
There it goes. So probably the hardest part of the discussion for us was to pick the project and define the scope of the project because we've got a lot of projects going on right now and they're all fairly long lead time projects, longer than the time frame that was recommended we pick for here. So we selected a subset of an existing project, which is our ERP business software system project to implement a new computer system, which is ERP stands for anybody who doesn't know, Enterprise Resource Planning, which is just a fancy way of saying a computer system that covers all the transactions through a business. So we picked the inventory flows portion or module within the ERP to scale it back to something where we could reasonably conclude in 9 months or so. The project scope essentially begins when the system is selected and the vendor has identified their implementation team to help us with the system. And it goes until we've got a fully trained and implemented system for inventory tracking. I'm the project manager, and we identified a due date. We took the full 9 months that was allotted, which might be a little ambitious, but still thought we could get it done in 9 months. For the budget, you know, we typically think in terms of external costs. So it's kind of healthy and refreshing to make sure we cover our, at least identify our internal time commitments needed and apply a cost to that to make sure we've got that identified and understood as to what the true cost of the business is of the project. So it's 300,000 external time, which is the software, sorry, not the software, but the implementation costs. So the software has already been selected and installed. This would be the cost of the implementation team from either the software company if they do it internally, or from a third-party partner if they use a third-party partner to do the implementation. And then we estimated a $200,000 internal cost for all the time that our own team would spend between the training, configuring the system, populating it with data, testing it out, going through a pilot, and ultimately getting to an implemented system ready for go live.
Question for you in regards to that. What is the cost of the software? Do you know? Or what are you budgeting for?
Well, there's so many different options that are available. You know, you can buy it and hang it on your own server, or you
Right.
can buy it and put it in the cloud, and that, or you can rent it essentially as an annual fee, and the software company or their third party essentially charges you rent.
Right.
So, I mean, we're looking at probably the same number for the software itself, maybe
Okay.
300,000 for the software.
Okay. Yeah, because all I'm saying is your number might be a little light, but that's okay.
Yeah, and we tried to scale it back to just the inventory flows piece.
Right.
But
Right. Okay. No, that's fine. That
I
answered that question.
it's debatable exactly what it would cost, but I think we will know that more in about 3 months.
Okay.
The statement of work, what is and is not included. So it's external costs with consulting costs, internal allocation of hours to implement. We did include those. We did not include the cost of hardware, so anything we needed in terms of either computers or servers, or desktop user level devices. Selection of the software was already done, so that's what we're in the process of doing right now. But we said this project wouldn't start until we had the software selected and a contract with that software provider. And then the cost of the software were not included.
Okay.
The project team members in our team were Guy, Bill, and Chewy, and myself. So actually, you know, between the team, Chewy would be representing the production side of things. The assumptions we had, obviously we were going to stay within budget. We had a competent advisor, and their staff was competent to train and help us implement the system. Assumption was the software we selected was going to meet our needs. So we had fully understood and identified what our needs were, which is what that next sticky there is really getting at. We were looking at our future state needs. So we had some view of what we needed now and essentially what we weren't able to do with the computer system or what the system couldn't do today was contemplated in the software that we selected and our understanding of how it worked. Our employees are capable and able to operate in an ERP environment, meaning we have people who either are trained or will be trained and are capable of working in that environment. Language barriers. Essentially, we have a large group of Spanish-speaking folks, so we wanted to make sure that either those that needed translation or those that needed that kind of thing were covered. Resources are available, so this gets to the heart of making sure that the resources are allocated and prioritized and making sure the project has correct ownership and sponsorship and has been prioritized from the top down within the company. Clear roles and responsibilities have been defined, sort of the same concept, but maybe more specifically to making sure it's clear who's responsible for what so that as differences of opinion come up, people can hopefully come together to solve the problem that's best for the project and sort of the leave your ego at the door idea as well. So that's the assumptions. And then I can't see the risks. There, thank you. So for risks, sort of goes hand in glove with the assumptions, more or less. We don't fully understand our business processes, so we've either not thought through things thoroughly or fully to make sure we've identified anything that's either unique or special with either our business or the way that our business transactions happen that unfortunately didn't get identified until we discovered the problem during implementation. We don't ever really want that to happen, but it's okay to break the system during implementation. That's what it's there for. The issue would be if we can't find a proper workaround for that. Technology connectivity, so making sure we had good connectivity to the system from remote locations, whether it's, and essentially if we were looking at a cloud-based system, connectivity to the system for everyone would be either through a Wi-Fi router connection to a cabled fiber or optic internet connection or through a cell connection. We have a challenge with that with our field locations being able to connect when they're out in the orchards. Item 3 there is we have competing projects for time commitments. Again, this goes towards making sure we not only have adequate resources, but the resources are, their time and priorities are aligned with the project priorities. Item 4, we miss components for future state needs. Kind of what I talked about earlier with making sure we understand both what our current needs are as well as envisioning what our future needs are. Implementation advisor is staffing or competency issues. So that would be if the partner we selected or the partner that the software company provided was not performing adequately or was getting pulled in too many directions with other projects going on at the same time, sort of the same issue we might have internally. And then going over budget, the obvious financial one that we don't want to have happen.
Okay. Did you have anything down here? Oh, you did. Data dictionary?
Yeah, I just, we put in there making sure we define what an ERP is. And then also defining this project the scope of this project a little more clearly. Inventory is really the flow of goods from start to finish. So from receiving and purchasing or contracting through the shipment of packaged goods, or at least being ready to ship packed goods. And then trained was more of a focus on just making sure the training gets to all levels as appropriate within the organization for those who will be users of the system.
Okay. Anyone have any comments?
I do. So on the first project, I can't believe we didn't put COVID in ours, because that's definitely a risk,
Okay.
even though Glenn County is officially off the list today. But all our employees, we've been very relatively low impacted by that so far, so that's definitely a risk. I'll just make a comment too, that we spent most of our time trying to define the project and the scope, because implementing an ERP system is a huge, multi-year project. Once we got through that, then it was a lot easier to identify the risks and all the details behind it. So that 90% planning and 10% implementation really came through to me.
Okay. Good. Good. And that's the same for who else was on your team? Joey, your experience.
Yeah, my experience was basically as the scribe, I was too caught up in trying to keep up with everybody. I didn't get to give much input, but I was hearing it all, and it made sense to me, and I couldn't really add on value to what the conversation was. So because we were rapid firing,
Yep.
I guess. So just kind of knowing that as project manager moving forward, whoever the scribe is, they're kind of just going onto autopilot. They're not really going to contribute much unless we slow down and give them an opportunity.
So there's a perfect example. This is part of what the role, remember I said the soft skills or the interpersonal skills of the project manager. Project manager needs to make sure that if the scribe is a team member and not a person who's just been assigned to do the scribing, that they get an opportunity to provide input as part of this process. So that's a good point. The other thing is I always recommend that the scribe become a position that gets shared. In other words, every time you guys get together, everybody rotates so everyone gets a sense of it. And then again, it helps avoid some of that. Okay, because this is the first time. Overall,
Jess?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just going through the selection of which project we were going to do, I think we lose track of time very, very quickly. So knowing that, maybe even having the scribe have the responsibility of time management for that meeting, so that meetings don't run 5 hours, for instance, something like that.
No, I would agree. Actually, very shortly, we're going to introduce a tool that actually reduces that brainstorming time to a very short period of time. And so, again, remember what I said at the beginning, that this class is starting from the point a project has already been decided and you're actually going to move on. It was just really for the purpose of the exercise for you guys to decide on one. But there is a whole thing that happens ahead of time, and that is from a company perspective. If you have a lot of ongoing projects, there should be a priority of which projects have the priority, and basically this is what you hand off to so normally there's a whole different piece, but the tool that we would use to help you to facilitate and take a large number of ideas and narrow those down to what we call our 5-3-1. Here are the top 5, here are the 3, and here's the number 1 that we're doing. We're going to use that tool here when we do the work breakdown structure. So you'll be introduced to that tool. But again, typically at this point when it's handed to the project manager, you're not going to be going through that. You're being handed a project. So we just had to decide for one for the team. Comments from anyone else? Okay, just Quick item for you, Brad, as the project manager, under what's included, what's not included. You said there's no hardware. You're talking about an inventory management system, barcoding, and barcoding equipment may be something that you may want to consider as part of the inventory management piece. Even if you're not physically moving product, but using barcoding to track the movement of the material or flow of material. So something to consider. I think you were very clear. I think when in your statement, you were clear on which hardware you were not including in here, which is great. From my concern, the challenge is what is written down says hardware. So in my mind, if I'm your sponsor, I'm thinking of any hardware where barcoding equipment is hardware. So something for you to think about.
Okay.
Okay. Be specific. You can be very specific there that you're not looking at your IT infrastructure hardware and that's not included, and that makes sense. But there may be some other hardware out there. Anyone else have any comments? Okay. Who's next? No one else? All right, team 2, you're up. Zoomed in too much. All right, team 2.
Cool. You guys can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So our project name is the ClockShark User Onboarding Project. The scope is within the next 3 months, ClockShark will be developing a new and effective onboarding process for its app by integrating Intercom by utilizing resources from engineering, marketing, and customer success to reduce support time and costs. Myself is the project manager. Due date was within the next 3 months, so we put it out for December 7th. At first, I had done a budget of dollars based on some napkin math, as I like to call it, and then talked to Jess and kind of whittled that down and changed it to 480 hours of labor for the budget, and we'll get to the dollar figures later. So what this project is, just to kind of give you the high level so everyone can kind of understand, is we're a software company, and the businesses that use our software sign up for it, and then they invite their employees to download the mobile app and use that mobile app to record their hours worked. So they clock in at the beginning of the day, they clock out at the end of the day, they take breaks, they add photos and attachments, do a whole bunch of stuff in the mobile app. But what doesn't happen very well right now is the employees that are downloading the mobile app don't get onboarded very well. They get an email that tells them to download the mobile app and log in, and that's it. And they basically have to play around with the mobile app to figure it out on their own. Causes a lot of support issues, causes some employees that aren't really interested in trying to figure out how to use it. So the project is to develop a better onboarding process for that. So the statement of work we have here is what's included with this project is some development time, our developers tweaking the tool that we use for this onboarding process to make it usable, which is called Intercom. Intercom is a third-party software that we already use in our support process. So it's like our chat feature. If you've ever chatted with customer service for any company, clicked on their little chat link in their website, that's essentially what Intercom is. Intercom has a new function called mobile carousels, which is used for onboarding. It's not usable out of the box, which is why we have development time included, because they have to tweak the API and the SDK and how we're connected with Intercom in the mobile app. So development time, engagement with Intercom to make sure it's working or we have it set up correctly. Messaging design. So there's gonna be a lot of designing of the onboarding slides, what they look like, making sure our branding is there, colors, tone, all that stuff. Messaging creation, so the actual content that's gonna go in those slides, which will most likely be text and images, but we will probably also have a video, which will need to be created as well, that we'll put on the very first slide. And then once that stuff is designed, content created, videos created, then we'll go into a quick testing phase before we start to roll that out. What's not included are any other upgrades or updates to the mobile app. We won't be looking at to do other stuff. We're very focused on just this onboarding piece. And then any other functions related to this mobile carousel function that Intercom now has available for us to use. So we're only focusing narrowed right down onto the onboarding process, not anything else we can do with mobile carousels. And then any outside media production. So the video creation will be in-house, not in a video studio or having to need help from anybody else. It'll be someone using their computer and their web camera to create this welcome video, basically. Project team members. So we have engineering, marketing, and then customer success. Customer success is a fancy term for a department that essentially handles the quality of life for anybody that's using ClockShark, whether it's the company, the administrators, or the end users out in the field. So we have Krista as a challenger and a contributor, Jamie is a contributor and a challenger. We kind of went through and discussed what kind of traits people have the most, and then laid them out and helped align with what they would end up doing throughout the project.
What about you, Luke? I don't see anything on you.
So yeah, we got cut off, I think, as we were finishing that up and had to come back to the main group. Obviously project manager, and I would say probably the challenger more than anything, making sure the work is getting done properly, and challenging when people need to do stuff differently.
Okay, well, that's a big red flag for me. I see 4 challengers and only 1 communicator as I see contributors and contributors and communicators, so, but heavy on the challenger side.
Makes sense. Definitely get that tweaked or take a look at it and try to rearrange it if we need to.
Okay.
And then down on the assumptions, we can. Oops. So we have a few assumptions right now. One of the assumptions is that the budget will have the hours available. Another assumption is we'll be able to pull resources from other projects, so other teams. Right, the engineering team specifically has lots of other projects they're always working on. So we're assuming we'll be able to pull those resources over to get the project completed.
Okay.
And the risks match those. So we have the risk will be risk. It could go over the budget for hours needed, and then not being able to pull resources from other teams. So trying to figure out what to do in those cases if that's not possible.
Okay, so again, for this one is which one's your number 1 priority, which one's number 2? And again, okay. I also want you to start thinking, this goes for everyone, start thinking for once you prioritize for at least the top 3, what would the contingency plan look like?
Awesome.
Comments from anyone else?
I have a question.
Sure.
So, and I'm not familiar with your software, but so let's say our company implemented it and we're having our employees clock in, right? That's how
Yep.
it works.
Correct.
Okay, so do you reach out, where do you show that you're going to improve reaching out to maybe my HR department or people at our company to like train the trainer? Instead of having my employees call into you directly and use up your resources, we could have an initial training of all of our employees on how to use it, just to get them up to speed faster, like we do our own onboarding.
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's not in this project because that is already has its own process in place for that. So that happens outside of this, and obviously before this, there's a ramp time. There's a trial period where you're working directly with someone on our account specialist team, where they do all that training, and frequently we do. Frequently companies will bring their employees in during the trial phase and have like a group training for their employees. But a lot of companies don't do that for us. They just start the software. They never communicate with us. They learn it on their own, and they invite their employees to it. And we never do any training for the employees. So that's what this project is specifically for, is having that outlet for the employees in their mobile app where they can get onboarded properly in the event that the companies don't do any specific, training of their own once they're trained by our team. If that makes sense.
Okay, so I want to hear from every team member. Filling this out, filling the brief out, charter out. Easy, difficult, challenging, hate it. I'll take any comment. Who wants to start? All right, Julie.
Thank you. I enjoyed this process. And although I listed myself as a communicator, I really did not have a lot to say. I mostly listened because this was Luke's project. And I think that depending on where you work, your project brief is going to take a little bit of a different format based on company size and who your sponsor is. I think Luke said that ClockShark has about 37 employees. So from my perspective, we were able to gloss over a lot of detail because a lot of things can be assumed because everyone knows what everyone else does, as he said. Whereas I work for Butte College and, we have 17,000 students a year. We have thousands of projects and grants. And so we have to really go really deeply to explain to leadership, our sponsor, what the justification is, what each person does. And so I think my project brief would be a lot deeper. So I thought this was a really interesting project to see the contrast.
Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, wouldn't be much different, I would say, other than, so at this first stage, because this is going to get deeper, by the way, right? And so I understand what you're saying is that in your structure, in your organizational structure, you would have to have more detail when you go, like we talked about yesterday. You need a lot more detail, especially when you go and talk to the board or whoever upstream you're talking to, right, for that decision to be made. But the work is going to be the same that you're going to be going through. It's just that where we are, this is all you know. As we start doing these other things, you're going to be adding to your brief because your brief is going to become much more detailed as you go forward. And at every stage, you should be reporting to your sponsor. Part of the role of the sponsor is to help the project team make sure that both parties understand what is the scope of the work and everybody agrees, because ultimately, let's put it this way, if the sponsor hands a project to a project manager and assumes he's going to get what they asked for, that's not being a good sponsor, right? So, because at the end, you might spend a lot of money and not get what was originally expected. So, yes, where you are, and you're right, based on your structure, your organization, you're going to need a lot more. And so information than just this, but this is the starting point. This is where you begin that conversation with your sponsor going back and forth, and you will be going back and forth. And then as you do the next step, you're going to discover that maybe those assumptions are going to change because you're going to discover some other things. And then the risk priority is going to change because you may discover something even more critical. And so it's a good starting point. It's a good starting point. But yes, your organization, I would agree, you probably have to be a little further along and do some of the other work that we're going to do before you actually go show this.
And would you, I guess I'm wondering, would you put in your risks or in your assumptions, because you have your project team members that in a perfect world you're counting on, but I've never been in a project and not had my team members pulled out from under me, at least at some level, for all or part of a project. So
yep. So you put that
where
in
do you account for that, I guess?
No, you put that in the assumptions and you put that in risk. That is legitimate. That is actually legitimate. And it's not just your organization. It is very, very common. And again, we didn't go over project organizational structure because that's really outside of this particular course, but that's a key part. When you have a matrix organization, that is always a risk, and it's always a high risk because anytime you start rotating project team members, you end up with disconnect, and the opportunity of change, internal changes occurring to the scope of work increases, which in turn increases the cost, right? Which also affects the time. I've seen it where even the project manager is swapped out. And at that point, that project manager may decide they want to do it completely different. And then they do a complete replan. And so those are high risk. And so, yes, especially if you're in, here's the other one. There are organizations, and we have worked with organizations where they have a high revolving door of people in the company in general. And when you have that, guaranteed you're going to have people swapping in and swapping out of projects. And so that's a big impact to the project. And so some folks in management may not see it that way because they don't quite understand the impact of moving people and the learning curve associated. And just throwing brand new people, back to why my comment to you guys were put the hours in there, don't put the dollars yet, because you guys had not even talked about really some of this stuff going to be done outside, some of it going to be done inside. Are we going to have people rotating through? That's a bigger impact for this type of work than it is for the ERP, as an example, or the installation of a piece of equipment. So all of those things you need to take into consideration and thrown in there as a potential risk. Because you are making assumptions about that. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, as you guys are doing this report out here on your project brief and charter, put yourselves in the shoes of your own environment. This is what you should be doing with the executive sponsorship or executive leadership of your company at this level in part of the project planning, so that you're having a very open discussion around resources. Because been there myself, you get 80% of the way through the project and half your resources get pulled 6 months later to go work on another project. You have the right to turn around and say, this project just got added on another 3 months because you just pulled 50% of my resources. Now I'm doubling the time to complete the project. Or make a decision to put other alternate resources on it. You've got to manage that very, very closely from a project management standpoint so that that doesn't happen to you. If it does, it's very obvious, it's been talked about, and it's not kind of like out of the blue. And you're constantly communicating the resources and allocations throughout the project.
Right, but I also want to point out, this isn't, you got to remember, okay, if you're reporting up to executive management or to leadership, this is the reality, right? The reality is a lot of folks assume that they know everything. The reality is they only know about 4% of what's really happening, because their focus should be somewhere else. It should be looking towards the future of the organization, not the day in and day out. As a project manager, it's your responsibility to point that out so it's understood. So when decisions are made at the leadership level, they're made consciously, right? And if they don't know and a decision is made, they just don't know, right? Again, the role of the project manager is to be, here's the good, here's the bad, here's the ugly. the answer at the end from management may be is the job has to get done, and it has to get done in this time frame and with this budget. But that's when you start negotiating the scope of work. What is it that we really need to get, and why do we need to have it on that day? So when we have those discussions, right, about why is it, as I mentioned before, why is this project important, and what are the outputs and the results that we need to get? And so that is a responsibility of the project manager to make sure that gets communicated. It may not be what the sponsor may want to hear, but the sponsor wants to hear some reality, that job's going to get done, and if you're running into challenges, you need together to work those challenges. So I hope that helped answer the question. Jamie.
Well, I really enjoyed kind of putting this together because it's something that's so foreign. I've never worked in software, technology or anything like that. So I actually really found this helpful as a tool to organize how I'm understanding what's even happening. So I think that's a testament to how effective this brief could be in communicating what you need to get done. Another thing that I noticed is something that you mentioned is that in our group, we have a lot of challengers. Mm-hmm. And that makes me think, sometimes you don't get to pick who's on your team.
Right.
So if I were the project manager, I would start thinking about how I could encourage my teammates to fill roles, and how I could then, if there was a hole, I could work in that role to fill. Because I don't think we have any collaborators on there.
None.
But so
that's a problem.
Somebody who wants to get to the goal, right? So I think that's interesting. Like the team dynamics part of it was interesting.
Yeah, rarely from what I've seen, do projects and teams have any view of what the team makeup looks like from a personality or a character standpoint. A lot of it's just like, here's who's available, here's the team to go work on it. But it's an important dynamic to look at. Most people look at it as, well, I don't like that person, so I don't want to be on the team. But it goes well beyond that as far as communicative collaborators and how you're doing stuff. So it's an important thing to look at. And sometimes it's a hard discussion to have with a team too, as to what do you think you are? Because not a lot of people self-reflect very well. They have to be told this is what you could be as far as a contributor or a collaborator, and this is what you may fit into. It's a good discussion to have, though.
Yep. So we're getting close to time, so not to rush other folks. Krista? You're on mute.
Whoops. So I thought this was good. It's a valuable tool. I've done some project charters in the past, but this was my first time as like a group activity, at least starting out. Normally, I would make the charter and then present it to my team, and like they would pick it apart as needed. So that was a different perspective. And I guess I had another, like similar to your budget comment, about different groups perceiving it differently. Same thing, like terminology is really important, because for me, usually onboarding means something very different. Like employee onboarding is how you like orient and then prepare a worker for their job. So like getting down into what Luke was trying to accomplish with onboarding was different, and it was nice to learn something new.
Luke?
Yeah, for me, it was just learning the organizational aspect of all of this. Being that we're such a small company, and I was the first person in the company underneath the co-founders, I've always been in a mode of, this is what we want to do, I'm just going to figure it out, and then I'll ask for people to help me when I need it. And it's kind of just still been that way. Recently we've expanded our engineering and product teams. We actually have a product team now as of like 3 months ago. So we have a director of product. So that's helped a little bit with the management of projects, especially around the engineering, actually, creating code for our software. But managing projects on my teams has always just been a hodgepodge. So I've really, so far, I really like the aspect of laying it out all this way and creating it and getting input from the rest of the team I think it's helped a lot so far, and excited to see where it goes.
Good. Good. All right, we got one more team. But these guys finish early. So this one should be straightforward, maybe. Okay, team 3.
Can you scroll up to the top a little bit? There you go. All right, so our project is a parking lot expansion project. The project scope, construction of a 6,000 square foot parking lot. And it's in addition, so it's an expansion basically. Our due date is December 20th. And then our budget is 150,000. Can you scroll down?
Yep.
Sorry. The statement of work, what is included is underground electrical. That's for just the gate. We are not including parking lot lights, which a lot would assume electrical goes with because we have lights coming from off the building. There's going to be water, asphalt, curb or parking blocks, striping for the parking lanes or lines, and then landscaping. That is all included. The other stuff that's not included is groundwork and grading. That's already done. So it's already been done for a while, and we didn't include it in the project scope. No parking lot lights, like I said. The gate is already there, and so is the fencing, since we're just adding more parking spots, basically. One thing that we kind of can't control is change orders, and adjustments are not included as well.
Your team?
Team members are Kevin, he's the collaborator, Gerald, who did the scribe work, and Susie, collaborator as well, and then myself.
Okay. Assumptions?
So our assumptions are all of the material and resources are available. That was kind of both with our recent construction projects from Campfire blowing up, and then also having COVID around too. Just want to make sure that we note that, you know, we're assuming that all materials are available. We're able to secure a contractor. Same thing with how contracts going right now. There's quite a few people working out there. Also the weather conditions. We realize that this is going to be during some potential rainy periods of time. So we're assuming that we're going to have good weather conditions since we're going to be working outside. And then we're also assuming that we can have the work done during normal work hours. So if the plant or facility is closed, people can't be there working inside the gate. So we're assuming that they're going to be there building this during normal hours. So our risks, demand is high, unable to secure contractors or contract with one. Poor weather conditions, as I mentioned. Certain material and resources might not be available. Unable to work during the day, and then inadequate site preparation, meaning maybe the grading wasn't quite what it needed to be and needed to be touched up.
Okay.
So our data dictionary is budget equals dollars, and then normal hours are 7 to 5. And then the parking lot, basically what we weren't quite sure of is the landscaping, the location of it, the number of parking spots, and then how often we're going to have to redo the asphalt that we're putting down for the parking lot. So does it need to be sealed every year, every month, every 2 years? Yeah.
Okay. So for me, a couple comments as it relates to the project itself. Number one, and you started to go down that road in regards to as far as asking how often you need to seal. One of the things is you defining the requirements that you expect right? Because you're going to outsource the asphalt, right?
Yeah, the whole project.
The whole project, right? If you're going to outsource, then you need to define some very specific requirements. So they're not bidding the lowest and cheapest thing, right? And so part of this, which when we get to the actual planning piece, someone needs to define what that scope should be, or at least put some parameters of what you expect, right? And so that way that the bids that you get are going to be equal, because some contractor may be bidding the high end stuff and some contractor may be bidding the low stuff. You're not going to know. And so things to think about early on in there, what is included, what's not included. And that means that obviously that's going to affect your internal cost, right? Because somebody's going to have to spend some time doing that, or you find someone to do it, however you want to do it. So there's that piece. The other piece you have high on your priority as number one is poor weather conditions. And as far as poor weather conditions, you cannot control the weather. But what you may want to identify is say, okay, this is a high risk. Here is the things that we think we can help influence. Or you can also put it in there and say, this is something that we want the contractor to provide as their contingency plan if they run into weather issues. Okay. These are just things to think about at this brief to say, here is what's included. What's included is, here's what we're going to include. This is what we're going to be asking the outsourced folks to bring in. I mean, other than that, it's the same comment as the others. Once you identify your risk, what are you going to put in there for contingency plans? How are you going to address it? How are you going to influence those risks or mitigate those risks? So same question to the entire team. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first real quick. I think this format is really helpful in going through it as a group. Really kind of brings attention to areas you kind of wouldn't think about. I know for us, we don't necessarily sit down and be like, okay, what are we missing? And have a full-on conversation about that. Usually we're just off to the races getting stuff done. So it's kind of helpful to have the template to follow and make sure everything is getting checked up on.
Okay. Pick the next person on your team.
I can go. Along with what Josh said, I think putting it in this format helps you plan it out, and it makes you think about all the things that you should be thinking about in the planning stage. But it also, I think that when working with everybody, it helps you see from what perspective they're looking at. If they're focusing on budget, or if they're focusing on like the physique, like is it going to look nice or is it not, or how is it going to work? I just think everything comes together and it works good.
Okay.
I liked this tool a lot. I think it was pretty easy to use, and as a scribe, I felt like it was easy to populate all of the fields and use the sticky tabs. I think it's a good standardized tool to get everyone's perspective brought together all in one starting location. So I think it was good.
Good.
I also liked it as a collaborative roadmap. It gave us a real good direction. And then I do like the fact that you can take this and with your sticky notes, you can kind of make assignments and gain better clarifications on the next step, which I assume is the next step.
True. You'll make copies of post-it notes, yes. Okay, good. Any comments on today? I mean, basically that was the plan to get through this, and we'll start the WBS on Tuesday next week. Is it Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday next week. Any comments on today? Anybody want to make any comments on today? Good, bad, indifferent? Really? Nobody wants to say anything? Okay.
Question about this last project.
Pardon?
I had a question about this last project.
Okay.
With the risks, I was curious whether it is assumed that it's exempt from ADA compliance, because that might bring in, that might limit the number of parking spaces, and it may even add additional costs or additional grading, if that is an element to be considered.
I'm
not sure.
This project is actually one that is on my forefront right now. And so we did not take any ADA compliancy issues into account because there is no ease of access for sidewalks or anything else included in this. It is just parking spaces expanded. And because of our occupancy not increasing, we do have our handicap stuff closer to the building. So it's kind of like an overflow. So yeah, as far as we know, there is no occupancy or ADA compliance issues with the current layout.
Actually, that brings another thing to mind, and Mike, you can chime in this. So from a construction, if there's already an existing parking lot, you're expanding the parking lot, the other thing you may want to consider is the compatibility of materials in your requirements, because that in itself could cause problems for you down the road.
Excellent point.
Yep.
Excellent point.
Yep. So again, these are things now that I'm expecting to see when we get to the work breakdown structure, that we start seeing some of these things. But remember, we do this, the reason we do this multiple passes, because at every pass we're going to learn more and we're going to add some more. We're going to have some more questions, to the point that, you want to get to the point that 80% of all the things that could happen, could go wrong, you have down. And that way is you're only really focusing on stuff that pops up that's in the 20%, versus the other way around is I only start with 20% of the plan and figure out the rest when I get through. And then I'm constantly redoing stuff and reworking. This is to avoid that. And so this is the starting point.
So I'll make an additional comment. From a class perspective, this starts to pick up because you guys are interactively working on stuff. But I guess there's some thoughts out there that are still saying that I never have time to sit down with a team and actually take the time to do these types of things and actually pre-plan, because there's always that feeling of I've got to perform, I've got to deliver. Now that I've had a project assigned, I've got to go get it done. You've got to get away from that emotion and that feeling and put it aside, because once you start doing this way and practice it, you'll start to realize that if I get nothing done in that 80% planning, but I execute to a T, that last 20%, you'll deliver every project A+ every time. There'll be other factors to it and stuff too, but you've got to get away from that notion of having to just get tasks done and get things done to show that things are happening on the project. I've been on projects before where we say, hey, we're still in planning, and the output is just the project charter. We've spent 2 weeks on it, and people are kind of looking at it going like, well, when's the project going to start? Well, it has started. We're just in planning. And you've got to stick to that. And a lot of folks, especially at the upper levels in the business, are probably not going to see that. They're not in a position to see that. They just need the highlights and need to know it's going to happen.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, good. Again, everything will be there. We're going to continually return to this, to the brief, as you do every step. And the report outs you just did, we're going to do that at every single step through this project. So next is going to be work breakdown structure. And then we're going to be looking at identifying skills and resources. And then we're going to create a budget. And then we're going to then we'll start. Once we do all that, then we can start working on the schedule, because the information will be there to create the schedule. And this is all part of the planning. And so I'm going to give you a hint. When you do your work breakdown structure, you have to make sure you have planning in the work breakdown structure, because it has to be on the schedule. All right. Any other questions? Then I think we're good for today. And I will see everyone on Tuesday. And again, you're free. There's no homework today, but you can certainly go back in make some adjustments if you like. So you have complete access to this going forward. All right.
All right.
All right. Thanks. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody stay safe.